The ideas behind CAVP were actually conceived in a therapist's office some 20 years ago, when I was the client. As strange as it all seems to me to this day, I wasn't even really seeking help. Earlier encounters with therapists had left me jaded and convinced that counseling was pretty much a sham. I was there to get my buddy off my back and to prove that counseling was worthless. How ironic that the very things I did to try and expose therapy as snake oil were actually things that did just the opposite. My therapist was simply a genius, way ahead of her time. She knew things that many therapists still don't know today. I'm not sure how she knew what she knew. I just know she did. And I'm not sure what ever happened to her either. By the time I bothered to look her up again, her practice was gone. I only know her name, and no search has ever turned her up on the internet. I surmise that she has chosen to forego the sticky web of social media and spend her time on things more important in her life. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she is just that smart. She never did tell me exactly what strategies she was teaching me, but I know that it was either cognitive behavioral approaches, CBT, or neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, or some of both. No matter, it was effective. In a nutshell, she taught me how to identify my irrational thoughts and replace them with rational ones. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Simple, yes. But easy? Oh, hell no. There are specific steps that must be followed and repeated consistently to make it all happen. CBT was developed out on the East Coast in the 1960s by the likes of Albert Ellis, Beck and Donald Meichenbaum. CBT grew out of the dissatisfaction with Freudian principles and practices of the day. Basically, CBT espoused that the key to treating problems like depression, or nearly any other psychological issue for that matter, lie in changing the thinking that was causing the depression. There were two big problems with selling this idea to the general public, however. First, neuroscience taught that our thinking really couldn't change structures and functions in the brain. It was believed that by early adulthood, the brain had done all of the migrating and changing of neural circuitry that was going to happen in the brain, and that these circuits and connections were now pretty rigid for the duration of one's life. Secondly, antidepressants had hit the scene in the 1950s, and the general public was now buying into the idea that psychological problems were caused by chemical imbalances and simply needed a chemical helper to get it right. Think about it. Who was going to opt for months of therapy that takes thousands of practice strokes if it can be cured within a few weeks with a medication? Hence, CBT got off to a pretty slow start. NLP didn't fare too much better in the face of neuroscience. NLP was developed on the West Coast in the 70s by Richard Bandler and John Grinder and based on the earlier work of Virginia Satir. Tony Robbins, the guru of the self-help circuit with his powerful motivational strategies, actually trained in NLP under John Grinder. Neuro-linguistic programming, as the name so aptly describes, is the process of reprogramming the neural circuits with language. Again, pretty hard to sell the idea of reprogramming the brain if it's believed that simply cannot be done. Even in the face of amazing results being demonstrated by both CBT and NLP camps, neuroscience and pharmacy reigned supreme for the next 20 years. This began to change when a man by the name of Dr. David Burns came upon the scene. Dr. David Burns was a student of Aaron Beck who popularized CBT with his two best-selling books, Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy, and The Feeling Good Handbook, which he wrote in the 1980s. With these two books, Dr. Burns brought a practical approach to using CBT that anybody could put into play. My best guess is that my therapist was quite familiar with these two books, although she never spoke of either one. As I look back on the exercises she asked me to do, they certainly have Dr. Burns written all over them. It wasn't until I got into my own master's program in 1999 that I personally became acquainted with the work of Dr. Burns. The Feeling Good Handbook was actually a required text in one of my theory classes. Leaping off the pages were the very strategies that had changed my life. If I had to pick one author that has been most influential in my development of CAVP, I would have to say it was Dr. Burns. His ideas just made perfect sense to me. As good as his ideas were, though, one problem remained and loomed large. People simply wouldn't do the work. As I began working with my own clients in practice, this became a huge roadblock to change. Again, the conundrum. The more tedious and cumbersome a task is to complete, the less likely clients are to actually complete them. I would spend hours teaching a Burns technique, send my clients home with a beautiful worksheet complete with detailed instructions, only to have them invariably come back without the worksheet, sheepishly admitting they had left it lying untouched on the desk, right where they laid it. But I noticed one thing, hard not to notice. They never forgot their phone.